welcome to the show, Shane. It's good to see you, man, as always, on this bright. We don't normally record on Monday mornings, but we're recording on Monday morning this time. So, dude, how are you?
It's good. Mondays I usually roll in pretty ready to go. When we record on Thursdays, that's near the end of my normal week, so I'm usually not winding down because Thursday is a busy day, but still it's not the beginning of the week, right? Where everything's bright, fresh, and you're like, oh, this week has so much potential, right?
Yeah.
Which I get excited about that, right? I'm excited for the weekend, right? But I'm also excited on Mondays, and just like I'm excited at the beginning of every month as we, how are we going to do this month? How are we going to do intake? How's revenue going to be? And, I get excited at new beginnings and I get excited to tighten things up, right? So, like I'm going through Q2 numbers and not just numbers, but, you've got all the numbers. How did everybody do? How did everything go on into the quarter? What's next quarter going to look like? So it's an exciting time. Yeah. And my wife is having a birthday on the 4th of July. So.
Well, her birthday's on the 4th of July?
It is, yeah.
Oh, well, the whole country celebrates your wife's birthday? Well, that's awesome.
When she was younger, her parents used to tell her this. They'd be like, the fireworks is just for you, honey.
How old was she when she figured out that her parents were liars?
I don't know.
That's a great.
I don't even know.
Oh, that's awesome. That's pretty hilarious that's what they did.
I bet it made it till like 8 or 9 for sure. Right?
Oh, yeah. It's probably about the year that they realized, Santa's not real too. Yeah. Like that whole thing, time frame.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you guys? Do you guys do anything fun over the 4th for that? Or
we usually have one or two friends over. Sometimes we do a bigger thing than others, right? I think we're doing a chili cook-off with my parents and her parents and us and my brother and his wife and probably one or two other people. We'll probably go out, have a fancy dinner on a Friday, the day before, and then we just chill. I mean, we were thinking about shooting some fireworks off on the ranch, but we also don't have water there, so we decided that was probably a bad idea.
Yeah, that could end poorly.
Just in case. My son's like, just take a fire extinguisher, Dad, but, could still end poorly, so we probably won't do that this year. That'll be a next year thing.
Well, what's interesting is because I'm in Utah, and they just, like 3 days ago, they did a statewide firework ban.
Really?
Because we've had like the worst wildfires, I guess, ever in Utah. There's like half of the state seems like it's burning to the ground. Like the air, you look outside and the air quality is like it looks like you're looking through fog. Looks like it all day, but yeah. So they banned it, which I'm like, holy crap, that's gonna be. I wonder how that's gonna, because they still sell them all, right? You go to all the tents and the grocery store. There's still get fireworks. Like so, people are still buying them. I'm just curious how that's gonna play out. They banned them. Are they just going to try to arrest?
They do controlled burns out in where you live or no?
Yeah, they do.
We had a very uncontrolled burn next to me one time, and we had firemen just show up at our house like, "Hey, are you guys you guys burning? That looks out of control." And we're like, "We're not burning nothing," and they're like, "No." Well, there's a huge fire next door, and
jeez,
there was a dead wood pile, and somebody down on the lake had been smoking while they were fishing and threw a cigarette out, and it didn't go into the water. It bounced onto land and hit some pine straws. And I guess pine straws can actually burn underground, under the level of where the stuff is, and it can travel. And then it just sort of burned its way up and hit this brush pile, and they had flames like 10 feet high.
Holy crap.
Yeah, in a wooded lot. So we had firemen over there for a couple hours putting everything out and getting under control. So,
dude, and then that's nuts.
Yeah, and then when we told them it wasn't us, they're like, "Oh," and then they came down and they said, "Yeah, we tracked it. It came from somebody on the lake." So,
dude, that's crazy. You'd never think that.
No,
I don't know they could burn under the. So you wouldn't even see it burning. It's just like.
Yeah, you might not even see it. It just runs along there or something. So. And, first thing I do is I'm thinking, dude, my kids had fires the other day. You instinctively think it must be them, but it wasn't them at all.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, dude, I remember when I was, go ahead.
No, that's fine. I was going to say, as a kid, we did controlled burns all the time in Wisconsin.
Yeah. I remember they happen all the time in Utah. That's a normal thing. But I remember one time I was a kid, we were playing with lighters and matches or something. We were out in the middle of this field, and we started this little fire by this tree, and we kind of started on purpose. And then we would like put it out, and then we would start it again. Then we would put it out, and then we started at one of the times, and it got to where we couldn't put it out, and we just like turned and ran. And we were dumb little kids. I don't know what happened, because all I know is we couldn't put it out, and the fire had gotten too big, and we just ran and hid. We all just pretended like it didn't happen. We ran to our houses, and nothing. So I don't know what happened. And it was close to our house, so we would have known like if somebody's house got burned or yeah. But all I know is that I still remember because we were trying to put it out so bad, and I remember getting like so close to the fire, it was like hurting, and I remember I was breathing smoke, and my lungs were burning, and I'm trying to put this fire out because I knew this was like a bad thing, and then we just couldn't, and I was just terrified, and I remember just turning and running. I was just like gone. This little boy, I was probably 8, maybe.
And I wonder how long you guys were worried about it, for days or weeks.
Forever. I remember at least that day I went back in the house, and we had like this split level house, and I remember running down to the basement, and I'm sitting there in the split level at the bottom right in my room, and I'm just like sitting there waiting and the door's closed. I'm waiting for the door to open and me to go to jail. That's what I remember waiting for. It was like the door's going to open, I'm going to jail. And it never happened. And then I remember I took my clothes off and I don't know how old I was, because I don't remember cleaning myself. I do remember changing. I did have the thought that I'm going to smell like smoke, but I don't think I probably showered, so I still probably smell like smoke. And then I remember going out of the room, and then like I saw my mom upstairs, and she didn't say anything, and I was like, okay. And then we kept going, and then I just never. And then, dude, it was like me and my friends. It was one of those we just never spoke about it again.
Did y'all go back to the spot and check it out?
I'm sure we did. I don't remember. Like, I'm sure we did, but I don't have memory of that. I just literally remember I thought we started the whole earth on fire, and we were all going to go to jail. But I never played. That was the last time I ever played with matches or anything. Like I never really.
That cured you, huh?
So it cured me of it. It cured me of it. Yeah. So anyhow, I know what we wanted to talk about today was not forest fires. And the
forest fires are bad. Like Smokey the Bear.
Forest fires are bad.
Forest fires. Don't set little fires and let them burn. And be careful with your fireworks. Is what
there
we'll
you
say.
go.
And
great
if you're
lesson
smoking
for
on
the
a lake,
4th of July.
Yeah, don't throw it on the bank.
Well, I'll tell you this. Yeah, if you're still smoking in 2026, don't you realize that there's a lot of different other ways you can get tobacco, get your nicotine without having to smoke? Come on, people. Let's step up the game.
Step up the game, huh?
I know. Not very many people smoke anymore, though. At least that's my experience. When you go out and about in public, it's just
go to Korea. They smoke a lot in Korea.
Does everybody smoke over there?
A lot more than we anticipated. A lot more than in Japan. So
interesting. Yeah. So, well, anyhow, so let's dive in, because I think the subject we want to talk about today is pretty impactful for all of us. As you started out on your business, you started your firm, whatever, and even you attorneys listening to this who are commission based, right? Where you and this is where I learned firsthand the feast and famine of lots of money to no money to lots of money to no money, and then finally figured out the difference between that and like steady growth and how to actually build that model. But it was in sales, because that was my first, and I still remember to this day getting, like, it was mortgages. That's what I was selling at the time. And I remember having my first month that I made 10 grand, and it was like, it felt like the lottery at the time. This was back in like 2002. And so I made 10 grand, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm the richest person who's ever lived. And then I remember, and I don't think it was the next month. I still think I made money the next month, but it was like within 3 months, I like didn't make anything. Like, so it was like I made 10 grand, and then I made close to it, and then it was like $1,000 or something. It was like it dipped off into that. So I don't know. It was interesting in that cycle, and how we cycle. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is just that cycle of cash and growth, and what does it really look like? Because we talk a ton on the show about growth all the time, right? About having growth year over year and scaling through and all of that. And I'm curious, Shane, when you started out your firm, and I really genuinely don't know, like when you did you have much fluctuation like that, or was it?
No, I didn't have a lot of fluctuation because there was nothing there. I mean,
Well, yes, true. It's easy to fluctuate with zero.
so when I started the firm, I'd been working at a big TV law firm in Atlanta, and I'd been there 4 years. So I'd saved up some money, right? I'd saved up, I knew our monthly nut, and I'd saved up 6 months. So if I didn't make any money for 6 months, we would have been good. We would have been okay. And at least money wise. Now I'd have been stressed out to no end, but when I started, we did, so personal injury, I didn't have any cases. I took no cases with me, but I got a lot of, I'd say dog cases, in the sense that there were cases other lawyers had dropped, or so they couldn't get anything, and there were problems with the cases. I had a bunch of people I'd had contact with, and when I said, I'll do all these, they sent them to me, right? I signed up like 20 cases my first month.
Right.
But personal injury takes a while. And I was doing criminal law or criminal work just to keep the lights on for a little while, making a couple grand a month kind of deal, till the PI started working. And I think all total, we didn't make that much the first year. I want to say like 30 to 50 grand, and then it's just gradually went up over time, consistently. But I usually didn't look at things on a monthly basis. I looked at it on a quarterly basis.
Right.
I had a real small salary, right? Not a huge amount of money, just enough. And then I would I would keep everything else in the business, and quarterly I would distribute some money kind of deal. And that was my sort of basic attempt to try to minimize the high and the low, the feast and famine kind of deal. Was set a minimum threshold, let money just stay in the operating account and disperse it quarterly. And a lot of times I didn't even disperse the full amount quarterly. I would disperse a smaller amount, like 50 grand quarterly, to raise my yearly income up to like 200K, right? Because that way I picked a number that I felt pretty good we could consistently take every quarter and make my life based on that. Now, the problem is, in the beginning, we had 4 quarters. I would lose money one quarter, I would break even another quarter, and that would make money 2 quarters. So it didn't always work out like that, but generally that's how it worked out. And then we moved to where we didn't lose money any quarter, and we broke even one quarter, and we made money 3 quarters, and then it moved today where we expect to make money every quarter kind of deal.
Well, dude, you brought up something right at the very beginning of kind of how you had it framed up, which I think it's what I screwed up. And I didn't know I screwed this up, but when I made my, how old were you when you started the firm? Because it was
so let's see, I was 18 in 93, 97, 22, 25, 29, like 33, I think.
Okay, so you're okay. So you're a little, and that maybe, and dude, you had a lot more life experience. I think
I was gonna say I'd been a lawyer like 8 years when I did it, because I was in the Army for 4 years, and then I worked at that firm downtown for 4 years. So I was 8 years as a lawyer before doing anything on my own kind of deal.
Yeah, when I think that probably helped you stabilize the way you did it, because you said something casually, which I think is the key to why it worked for you, and it's what I watched me screw up, and I watched so many other people screw up. But it's everybody has a different name for it, right? The name I typically heard it was the slush fund, right? But it's that 6 months of payments, or basically your living expenses sitting in some account that if revenue was turned off completely, boom, there's that money that I would have sitting there that I could survive, maintain my lifestyle, etc. And when I first started as an entrepreneur, I didn't have that, right? As a business owner, and
you probably didn't even think about it, right? You
No.
make some money, you're like, I'm loaded, I will make this much money forever.
100%.
It'll only get better from here.
How many people, Shane, have you met that have fallen victim to that exact thought process?
Hell, I mean, I would say even you could throw me in there, Trevor, right? Like, I had my slush fund, but I never think, I mean, you know what? Next year is going to suck. I'm going to make less money. The only time I've done it is when I did a deliberate expansion, and I dumped a ton of money into growing the firm.
Right.
Right. But that was by plan and design. But just like absent that decision, I've never thought, next year is going to suck.
Right. Well, you're 100. Here's what's crazy. You don't ever think that that's going to happen, but the inevitability of that actually happening to you in your firm is actually much higher than you think. If we were to statistically look at all of the businesses that are out there, how many of them continue to grow year over year, that's actually not the normal. It's the anomaly, right? That's the exception to that rule. But I think it starts with what you described, because I didn't build that until later in my life. And the ups and downs of income, dude, talk about stress, talk about unneeded stress, because I would put myself, and I remember doing, like, making a business move similar to what you just described. Like, you're like, we're going to dump all this money in for growth. I did the same thing. The problem is I didn't have, to me, I was looking at the bank account and I was like, well, I have this much in there, so we're good. And I know that I always keep making money, so we're fine. Like, I know I'll be able to pay the bills next month. So I was one of those jackasses who I literally drained the account. So there were certain moves we made. It was like, dude, we have this much. I know this is going to work. Let's and I had this weird mindset of, dude, you're either all in or you're all out. Right? It was like, so for me, all in meant if I truly believe this is going to work, well, then I'm going to empty the bank account into it, because that shows all in, right? Burn the ships. We've all heard that, right? Burn the ships and leave yourself no option. And so I would do that, and sometimes it would work. Sometimes it would pay off, right? And then I'd be like, but dude, I can't tell you how many times I'd sit and tell my wife, and I'm so grateful I don't do this anymore, and we're not in that place anymore. But I would literally make a decision, business move, spend all the money, and then I would, like, reality would hit what I just did. And then I would look and I would realize that my wife needs to go grocery shopping and like run the house and stuff. And I would literally send my wife a message. I mean, if she were here on a call right now, she'd be like laughing and being like, yeah, he literally, but I would text her and I'd be like, hey, don't spend any money for a little bit. I'll tell you when we can.
Yeah, that's terrible, right?
She got used to that, like to that narrow. And what frustrated her, and we talked about it years later when it, wasn't a problem anymore, and we were able to actually speak about it. So, but she just told me, she's like, it was so frustrating because I knew we were making money, because I watched you spending a lot of money. And she's all, granted, I understood you weren't buying, exotic cars and all this. But she's like, you were spending a lot of money, and then you would tell me don't spend a single penny on anything. She's like, and then I'm like trying to pay a bill, like pay the light bill, and you're telling me don't spend any money. And then I got to, she's like, I got to where I'm like, can I put gas in the car? She got to where she like had to ask me, because it would there were times when I would run us so ragged, thinking that's what real business owners do. Like, that's the hustle, that's the grind, like
and it is what a lot of them do, right?
Yeah.
Now, that's not how I choose to live my life. And
dude, it's not a fun way to live. Like, you don't. Here's the narrative that I think that I didn't understand, and I think a lot of our listeners, if you guys can grasp this, to understand as well, it doesn't have to be that way, right?
No.
You can grow a business and not do that.
Well, and as good as I was at managing it pretty well, I remember having a conversation. And, when the bills start climbing up, right? And that number is different depending on where you're at. But, I mean, like in the early days, $25,000 Amex bill seemed like a ton of money, because I didn't know anybody else who had a $25,000 Amex bill, right? On a regular basis. But when the numbers started getting bigger, my wife started, she's like, hey, there's too many commas in this one, right? And she's talking to me, and she goes, I know you're growing the business, but, I don't know how much money I can spend, and I'm worried we don't have money, and, all these things, because I would leave it in the operating account to grow. And finally, I was at a mastermind somewhere, and somebody told me, and it was a woman, she was running it. She goes, most women, especially the women who aren't entrepreneurs, they're not in the business on a day-to-day basis running things. And my wife ran the books, and she did stuff, but she wasn't in like the command, she wasn't in the bridge. She was doing work, right? And they said, you're doing terrible things to your spouse when they don't have a when your money is this way, feast and famine all the time. You're making them hate you, and you're keeping their stress super high. And she said to me, she goes, just ask your wife how much money she needs in the account to be okay, Shane. And I'm like, well, what do you mean? And she goes, there's a certain amount of money your wife needs to see. And if she's got that much, she's perfectly fine. If she's below that, she starts to stress. And I go home and I'm like, listen to this crazy thing. And I think it was Lee Miltier from Dan Kennedy told me. And she goes, yeah, that's pretty accurate. And I'm like, what? She goes, yeah, I like to have 10 grand in the account at all times. If it goes below 10, I stress out. So then in my infinite wisdom, what that said to me was at the end of every month, I need to bump it up to 10 grand. That wasn't what it was. It was, but put enough in it so that in a normal course of a month, it doesn't drop below $10,000.
Right.
You know,
Which means you needed to bump it to 20 or whatever.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, but then it was okay. And then it got to where she wanted 20 grand, but I would just put it in quarterly because that's when I got paid enough money. I figured up the numbers and we're good to go, right? And then she's not stressed anymore. And that number has changed over the years, right? I think she's just psychologically gotten to where she's like, the numbers are all bigger, so the number needs to be bigger, even if it doesn't need to be bigger. But, that threshold number is so critical for your spouse's calmness and lack of stress over money. And sometimes it's just a pure conversation, right? Like, what's your number? Because you may have it in the operating account. I had it in the operating account. I could easily bump her up to the $20,000, and then we're good to go. And her baseline money stress just went way down.
Yeah. That mentally, it creates that security. And as a business owner, right, when you're running the show, even though obviously the upside is typically much higher than getting a job, right, somewhere, but you don't have the guaranteed consistency. And our culture naturally is seek safety and security. Like, that's like what we're drawn to. And especially for a spouse who isn't at the helm, right? Even if they work in it, they have no control over it. And that's what I did. I didn't understand. I didn't get that either. Like, it was like, I had no idea.
And I mean, you want to talk about stories. What are you telling your spouse when you dump everything into the business and you leave nothing for home, right? Especially when you know she's got to pay things like the light bill. This is not like take the family on a Disneyland vacation. This is pay the rent or the mortgage or the car payment or put gas in the car or the kids' daycare or sport thing. These are all like probably pretty necessary expenses that you're saying, figure it out, babe. I mean,
figure it out with no money. Go ahead and do those. Go do those things while at the same time dropping $50,000 in ads,
right,
or whatever. And there's this. Here's what I didn't realize that I was doing when I did that. So these things you learn as we go, right? But what I didn't realize is that I was constantly reinforcing that my business was more important than my wife. I didn't think, like, to me, that logically doesn't make sense. I'm like, no, my wife's the most important. This is for the business. I got to do this to grow. But all she was hearing was, no, that's not the case. And you keep running us through this crazy, holy shit, we can't survive, to all of a sudden we have money. And I remember one time she got so pissed at me because she's like, I don't understand you, because I'd done the thing, right, where don't spend money. But then all of a sudden I'd leveraged it, and the thing I did worked. And some money came in. It was like, okay, good, we're good, right? And it was a bunch of money. So I went and I bought something. I can't remember what I bought. It was like not a work-related thing. It was just something I wanted. It wasn't super expensive.
For you or for her?
I bought it for me. It was like a couple $100, and it wasn't a big. But we'd not had any kind of a conversation. The last thing she knew was don't spend money. And then I came home with it, and I don't even remember what it was. Damn it! I wish I remember. But I showed it to her. It had something to do with my car. I'm confident it has something to do with the car. And I showed it to her, and she just had this look on her face, and it was like those moments.
Wait,
the gentlemen.
We're gonna pause, Trevor. We're gonna pause, and we're gonna take a break till next week, and that's when you're gonna tell us what it was you bought or your wife's response, okay? Because we're running short on time here.
Cliffhanger.
But I want to know, and I think it's relevant because I know some of our listeners have done exactly this, probably over and over and over.
100%. 100%. So I think that's a great segue. So if you want to find out how the rest of this story ended with my wife, and if I'm still married to her or not, because I have been divorced. So the question is, which wife am I talking about here? Is this
wife too?
Is this wife one or wife two? So this story might end in divorce. We will find out on next week's show as you guys tune into it. But hopefully you guys got value from today's show. If you did get value today, share this show up with somebody you know, somebody who's a business owner, somebody who's trying to grow, somebody who's in the same pocket that we're describing. Really, just we want the show to grow to help benefit you guys. Shane and I we've done some stuff. We've been around a minute, and we don't pretend to know it all, but we have definitely learned some stuff and figured it out, and we just enjoy the opportunity to share with you guys. So final thoughts, Shane, as we wrap today, man.
No. Other than we'll get the rest of the story next week, because I know this boom and bust cycle is a bunch of our listeners are going through it right now.
Yep. Yep, it's a big one. It's a big one. So we'll continue this. Part 2 will be continued next week. So tune in for that. We continue the story and we dive deeper into how to protect yourself from this, because believe it or not, guys, it's actually a mindset thing. It has nothing to do with how much money you make. So that being said, we appreciate you guys being listeners of the show. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and we'll see you next week.